We're going to finish up this list in this video, starting with my number 10 team, the Philadelphia Eagles. Last week we saw what would happen if Michael Vick were to go away for any extended period of time. And as some of you might have guessed, they're not going to do so hot. Last week he went down with a concussion, and Mike Kafka had to fill in for him for the rest of the game. And it didn't end well. The Eagles pretty much gave up the game in the final minutes. Total meltdown. Not only is Michael Vick obviously a better passer and a better player than Mike Kafka, but his presence makes everybody else better. However, I do think that even if Kafka does go against the Giants, I think that the Eagles still have a pretty good shot of winning, seeing as how the Giants have lost pretty much like half their starters on defense with injuries. And as for Vick's status for that game, well, we're dealing with a concussion here, which is always a tricky situation to try to predict. One day you might be good, the next day you don't even know your own name. It's complicated to try to predict whether or not one can go for this sort of thing. I'm personally leaning towards he will go just because he doesn't want to let his team down, but I don't think that he will be 100% for tomorrow's game against the Giants. At number 9 on the list is the Atlanta Falcons. Boy, I really did not expect Tony Gonzalez to be leading the team in receiving yards. That I did not see coming. I would have guessed like Roddy White or maybe even Julio Jones, but Gonzalez didn't see that coming. At his age, I thought that he would be on a downward spiral, but right now he's leading the team in all three big receiving categories: receptions, yards, and touchdowns. So I like where he's going. I'm impressed with his, I'm not going to say revival because he's never really been bad. I mean, I think he's had 13 or so straight seasons with at least 50 receptions, and as long as he stays healthy, I'm going to guess week 10, he's going to have the second place on the all-time receptions list. But I don't know how long he can keep up this pace for, like being the leading receiver for the Falcons. But he's not doing it by himself. Matt Ryan is having himself a good year right so far, and Michael Turner's doing better than I thought he would. So kudos to the Falcons. They made up nicely from their week 1 loss to the Bears this week, and moving forward, I think that we can expect good things from the Falcons, especially in this week's matchup against the Tampa Bay Bucks. I think that that's going to be a high-scoring shootout. At number 8 on this list is the Pittsburgh Steelers. False alarm, Steelers fans, no need to worry. After your week 1 falling apart against the Ravens, you came back nicely and did exactly what you needed to do against a horrible Seahawks team. Well done. However, for fantasy people, there's a few things I need to point out. Number 1, if you're a Rashard Mendenhall owner, I would start to get a little bit worried because he's starting to lose a lot of carries to Isaac Redman. At the start of the season, I expected about an 85-15 split. So far, it's been more like 70-30, and I think that the shift might start to go a little even more towards Redman's side because he's averaging about a yard per attempt more than Rashard Mendenhall is. And as for the receivers, well, the receivers are looking pretty good all the way around. Mike Wallace is, of course, the leading receiver right now, with Hines Ward behind, and a battle for third right now is going on between Antonio Brown and Emmanuel Sanders. Antonio Brown is winning at the moment, and it looks like I'm not going to... how should I put this? I think that by the end of the year, Antonio Brown is going to supplant Hines Ward for the number 3 spot, and Emmanuel Sanders will probably just be the 4th receiver as a deep threat guy. But, you know, I think that week 1 was a fluke against the Ravens. I think that they didn't bring their A game during that game. But they're finally back. They're finally doing pretty good. And I think that they will be in good shape going forward, especially this week, taking on a very easily winnable matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of the aforementioned Ravens, they're the number 7 team on my list. You know, I've noticed something weird. Right now, with the Ravens, only 2 wide receivers have any receptions for this team right now. Anquan Bolden has 7 for 120 and a touchdown, while Lee Evans has 2 for 45 and no touchdowns. And it looks like Lee Evans is going to be out for tomorrow's game. So, That's a little bit weird. It's just something I noticed because there's also 2 tight ends that have receptions and 2 halfbacks, and also the fullback Vontae Leach has a couple. So, what should we make of that? I guess it's that Joe Flacco loves to take the check down throw instead of airing the ball deep, which is sad because that's pretty much why they brought Lee Evans on board and why they drafted Torrey Smith, who looks like he's going to get the start on the opposite side of Bolden. But if you want my opinion on Torrey Smith, I don't think that you should really worry about him for this week. They're going to probably keep it on the ground, giving the ball a lot to Ray Rice because he's been doing pretty well with the ball. And as for receivers, Bolden, maybe, but anybody else, pass. At 6 on this list is the New Orleans Saints. Well done, Saints. You've done well to come back after that really, really close loss to the Packers. You came back and pretty much shut down the Bears. Nicely done. A team that had just taken down your division rival, Atlanta Falcons. Nice. But they have another tough test ahead of them with the yet-to-be-mentioned Houston Texans. I think that this is a team that if they weren't already in a tough division that has Atlanta, who might just go 13-3 again, Tampa Bay, which looks to make another attempt at the playoffs, and Carolina, which is really starting to put points on the board, I think that we need to look at the Saints and say they're in a really tough division right now, and their chances of making the playoffs are still pretty good, but they're going to be in a lot of hotly contested games this season. At number 5 on my list is the Houston Texans. If the Houston Texans don't make the playoffs this year, Gary Kubiak needs to be fired because there is absolutely no excuse for them to not make the playoffs this year. The other 3 teams in the AFC South are going through quarterback transitions right now, and Tennessee is doing the best of the 3 right now with Matt freaking Hasselbeck. Okay? There is no excuse if the Texans cannot make the playoffs this year. And it looks like they're going to do that pretty easily because Matt Schaub is still a guy who can put up yards and touchdowns in bunches. Andre Johnson is still probably the best receiver in the NFL. And they're still managing to win games even without their best player, Arian Foster. Ben Tate has really stepped in and has delivered very well for the Texans right now. He so far had 47 carries for 219 yards and a touchdown through a game and a half. It looked like he wasn't going to play last week, and he still stepped in and played his butt off, picked up over 100 yards rushing. Nicely done, Ben. And it looks like Arian will be back in this week to take on a much tougher test than they've had to face so far this year. Through their first 2 games, they've gone up against Indy and Miami. Woohoo! Now they have to go up against New Orleans, a team that is almost as good as they are, I would say, at this point. It's going to be a very close matchup. I think that Houston might have a slight edge because of their better rushing, but we're just going to have to wait and see on this one. But I like where the Texans are going. At number 4 on this list is the Detroit Lions. In the words of Chris Berman, Lions? Yes, they are actually this good. In their 2 weeks so far of this season, they have kept Tampa Bay from doing what they do best, which is come back and win games they have no business winning. And they took it to the Kansas City Chiefs, blowing them out and blowing out Jamal Charles' ACL. Too soon? I don't think so. This is a team that I really think is going to make the playoffs this year, and is probably going to knock out the Bears to do so. But I'll be okay with that, because the Lions are they genuinely deserve it this year. And coming off, they're just, I think, 3 years removed from the worst season in NFL history. Now they have a legitimate chance of making the playoffs. Jim Schwartz, if you were to retire right now, I would submit your name for the Hall of Fame. Because you, sir, are a genius. I don't know how you've done it. Actually, I do know how you've done it with solid draft classes and bringing in really good players. But you have done extremely well with a team that has no business being this good. Well done, Mr. Schwartz. May the Schwartz be with you. At number 3 on this list is the New York Jets. Go ahead, Patriots fans. Do your worst. I can take it. But seriously, Who expected Sean Green to be a total bust? You stay down. But, yeah. On a serious note, Sean Green, probably not the first round pick that the Jets expected, but you know what? They're still winning with their defense. They're still winning with their consistent wide receiver play. Notice I'm saying wide receivers. Antonio Holmes is still a great receiver, and even though Plexico Burress laid a giant egg against an easily winnable matchup against the Jaguars, that's mostly because at some point the Jets finally said, we don't need to do this very much more. Let's just give the ball to Sean Green. Oh, he got stopped again. Bummer. Yeah, Sean Green, maybe not the guy. And I don't know if LT has too much in the tank, so keep an eye on Joe McKnight. I think that he will have a good chance of really breaking out for this team in the near future. And if that doesn't work out, well, who's to say that they can't do anything with Balil Powell? He's another guy to keep an eye on if you're into really deep sleepers. At number 2 on this list is the Green Bay Packers. I really feel like this could be the best team in the league, and I feel like you could make a case for them being the best team in the league, but something is just keeping me from doing it. Maybe it's because the Packers really have no idea what to do with James Starks. Let me give you a little bit of advice. Mike McCarthy, if you're watching this video, start playing James Starks. He is so much freaking better than Ryan Grant. Granted, Grant's not that bad. I'm saying Grant's a lot also. Weird. He's averaging 4.3 yards per attempt, but Starks is averaging 6.8. Okay? You can't really argue with those two numbers. Look. 6.8, 4.3. I think you've gotten the message. Start using James Starks. He's clearly the much better running back. Now, if they do start using James Starks, I will be much more inclined to put them as my number 1 team in the NFL right now. But until they start figuring that out, no, not yet. But that is not to say that this is not a good team, because this is a very good team. This is a team that might make another playoff run. Well, might make another playoff run. This is a team that will make another playoff run and could very well make another Super Bowl run. But they're going to have a tough time competing against my number 1 team. And finally, the number 1 team on the power rankings for this week is the New England Patriots. Really, was there any doubt in anyone's mind? This is probably the best team in the league. I think that 70% of people would probably agree on that point right now. The Patriots are just dominant right now, okay? Tom Brady is having an all-time year this year so far. We'll have to wait and see if that continues. They have 4 receivers right now with at least 10 receptions and 165 yards. Welker is actually leading the bunch with 15 for 241 and 2 touchdowns. And Chad Ochocinco isn't even one of those 4. They're doing this good even without their quote-unquote star wide receiver. And people aren't really mentioning him, but Ben Jarvis Green-Ellis has already found the end zone twice. This is a team that I think will win the Super Bowl this year. I know that sounds kind of early to be trying to predict these things, but you know what? Why not? I think that this is going to be the Patriots' year because they are good on offense. Defense, we'll have to wait and see on that one, because if Chad Henne can gash you for 422 yards passing, there's something amiss. But they were still able to limit Miami in the number of points they were able to put up to the point where they were able to win. The defense may not be great, but the offense can bail them out at will. I like the Patriots. I think that they're the best team in the NFL right now. And this has been the one and only Nicky V saying thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.